Winter storms, dramatic last words, and the coin toss that saved a life, and took one. Here's everything that happened on the day the music died. On February 3, 1959, Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Ritchie Valens boarded a 4-seat Beechcraft Bonanza plane piloted by Roger Peterson. They had just finished their final show at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa, having wrapped up at around midnight. Unfortunately, things went wrong mere moments after the plane took off. After flying roughly 5 miles, a witness saw the plane, or rather its tail light, suddenly start losing altitude. Air traffic control lost radio contact with Peterson before long, and it soon became evident that the plane had crashed.
To be honest, they weren't in the air very long.
The Beechcraft Bonanza was traveling at 170 miles per hour when it hit the ground. Only Peterson remained inside the plane, as the impact was so powerful that all 3 musicians were thrown from the aircraft. Worse yet, the extremely bad weather meant that there was no way for a rescue party to access the wreckage before morning, so the bodies had to lie in a field for hours. Holly's autopsy report later revealed that the impact had taken his life instantly in the most gruesome of ways. Buddy Holly had embarked on the Winter Dance Party tour largely because he needed money, and it was he who made the decision to fly to North Dakota. The tour was a young man's game. Holly was 22 at the time of his death, the Big Bopper was 28, and Ritchie Valens only 17 years old. Holly was the de facto leader of the artists, and it was he who ultimately felt the conditions on the road were becoming too much to bear. It was a bad winter, and their tour bus was as cold as it was unreliable, having already broken down on the road. What's more, the distance between their February 2nd concert in Iowa and their upcoming gig in Minnesota was a staggering 400 miles. The combination of a barely functioning tour bus and the long road that lay ahead was enough for Holly to decide to charter a plane instead. Since he and the other musicians were running out of clean clothes due to their grueling tour schedule, Holly intended to take everyone's laundry with him and wash it while waiting for those who would arrive via bus. In different circumstances, the Big Bopper might have survived the crash that killed him, or rather, wouldn't have been a part of it at all. This is because he wasn't originally supposed to be on the plane. Buddy Holly intended to take his own 2 band members on board while the others were going to travel by bus. Bopper's place was originally meant to go to future country superstar Waylon Jennings, who played bass in Holly's band at the time. However, Jennings was feeling under the weather, so he decided to ride the bus to let Bopper in the plane instead. This moment of kindness might have saved Jennings' life, but it also led to the Big Bopper's death. The haunting exchange Jennings had with Holly before the plane departed cast a dark shadow over his survival. When Holly joked that he hoped the tour bus would freeze up again, Jennings replied, "Well, I hope your old plane crashes." Though he lived on and became a highly popular artist in his own right, Jennings' life was plagued by financial issues, health problems, and personal troubles. He also spent years haunted by his words to Holly, harboring a great deal of survivor's guilt.
When you feel guilty about it and everything, you think and try and find reasons that you might have caused it,
Jennings died in 2002 at the age of 64. Ritchie Valens wasn't supposed to be on Buddy Holly's charter plane either, but he really wanted to be. Like everyone else on the tour that year, Valens was thoroughly fed up with the conditions on the tour bus. When he heard of Holly's flight and found out that it was already full, he started negotiating for Tommy Alsop's seat. Ultimately, Holly's guitar player agreed to settle the matter with a coin toss. He was thrilled to win, too. Before boarding the plane, he reportedly said, "That's the first time I've ever won anything in my life." Alsop went on to continue his music career after the crash. He died in 2017 at 85 years old. He understood how incredibly fortunate he was to avoid the plane crash, but like Waylon Jennings, also struggled with guilt over the incident. Aside from the musicians, the pilot of the plane also died in the crash that night. An investigation by the Civil Aeronautics Board eventually found that the 21-year-old Roger Peterson was at fault for the crash. Per the investigators, he didn't have the necessary instrument training to operate an aircraft in such difficult conditions. While there were no witnesses to the crash, outside of the few folks at the airport who saw the lights of the plane descending from miles away, the investigators found out that Peterson hadn't been accurately informed of the incoming bad weather, and when the snowstorm hit, he had to pilot the plane without being able to see anything. Since he hadn't been adequately trained to fly using the plane's instruments alone and couldn't see the horizon, he may have become disoriented, which could have led to the crash. In 2015, a pilot named L.J. Kuhn attempted to get the National Transportation Safety Board to reopen the investigation to potentially clear Peterson's name, citing passenger unrest, weight distribution issues, and other factors as potential contributors to the crash. Kuhn told the Pilot Tribune, "Roger would have flown out and about this airport at night under multiple different conditions. He had to be very familiar with all directions of this airport in and out." However, the board decided that Kuhn's input didn't warrant further investigation. In 1959, lines of communication were very different than they are now. There were no mobile phones or internet, so when a group of people were stuck on the road in a freezing bus, they were effectively isolated from the rest of the world. As such, the Winter Dance Party tour members who weren't in the plane didn't find out about the tragedy before they were already in Minnesota for their gig later that day. Buddy Holly's family members also heard of the crash in a truly awful manner. His wife Maria Elena was 6 months pregnant and was waiting for her musician husband to call her from the road when she found out about the news from the television. This traumatic moment has been blamed for her miscarriage, which took place shortly after learning of Holly's death.
I knew that if I would have been there, but it would have not taken the plane, because I would have put my foot down and said no.
Elena did not attend the funeral and has never visited her husband's grave. In 2019, she told the Mirror that she thinks about him every day. The plane crash also had a surprisingly profound impact on the way such tragedies are reported these days. After Holly's family learned about his death via the media, authorities recognized that something had to be done to avoid similar tragedies in the future. As such, airlines and media organizations began adhering to a new policy. Going forward, the families of victims would have to be notified before their names could be made public. Administrative wheels turned slowly, so this didn't happen until sometime after the crash, but the origins of the policy very much tie into the events of February 3, 1959. Despite losing 3 of its most popular stars, the Winter Dance Party tour wasn't canceled after the plane crash. Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper hadn't been the only acts on the roster. The lineup also included Frankie Sardo and Dion and the Belmonts. As such, the remaining musicians had to wrap up the Winter Dance Party tour with a truncated lineup. Waylon Jennings performed vocals during the Buddy Holly set, for example, while other teen favorite performers such as Frankie Avalon and Fabian flew in to round out the bill. Shockingly, the surviving musicians actually had to play a concert at the Armory in Minnesota on the very same day the plane crashed. They went on to play a total of 13 venues in as many days. The story of the day the music died didn't end in 1959. In fact, one strange rumor prompted investigators to reappraise the incident. A strange sequence of events ended with an autopsy of J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson in 2007, no less. Some 2 months after the crash, it was discovered that Buddy Holly had been carrying a gun on the plane. Due to this fact and the sudden nature of the crash, rumors began circulating that an exchange of gunfire had taken place during the flight, with Roger Peterson being shot in the crossfire. People also kept speculating over the fact that Big Bopper's body was found further away from the plane than the others. This led to the theory that he had somehow survived the crash and managed to free himself from the wreckage before succumbing to his injuries. In 2007, the Big Bopper's son, Jay Richardson, decided he'd finally had enough of the rumors, which had even spread through his own family.
Every year they'd get together, the family would argue over, did he survive the crash and was he going for help?
He commissioned forensic anthropologist Dr. Bill Bass to examine his father's body to find out whether there was any truth to the rumors of his father still moving on his own accord after the crash, or taking a bullet for that matter. Bass's findings were conclusive on both fronts, he told the CBC. There was no indication of foul play. There are fractures from head to toe, massive fractures. He died immediately. He didn't crawl away. He didn't walk away from the plane. The day the music died is etched into popular memory as the date of Buddy Holly's, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper's deaths. However, there was also another plane crash on February 3, 1959. And when it came to the sheer loss of human life, this one was much worse. At 11:56 p.m. that night, American Airlines Flight 320 was approaching LaGuardia Airport in New York when the plane flew too low and crashed into the East River. The accident happened because of a combination of bad weather, the crew's inexperience with the plane, and issues with the altimeter. Due to the darkness, heavy wind and rain, and the fast-moving river, locating survivors was difficult, and the rescuers were only able to save 8 people from the wreckage. 65 people died. Obviously, the crash of Flight 320 marked a far greater loss of life than that of the musician's 4-seater plane. Due to the cultural impact of the latter incident, however, the crash of Roger Peterson's light aircraft has been much better remembered by history. February 3, 1959 saw more than its fair share of tragedy, though not all of it was quite as dramatic as the crash in Iowa or the Flight 320 disaster. This also was the day Vincent Astor died of a heart attack aged 67. While the name might not ring a bell, Astor's status and achievements might. Vincent Astor was part of the Astor family, who were the very first millionaires in the United States. As a result, they were massive movers and shakers in New York City's more powerful circles. Former prominent family members include Titanic victim John Jacob Astor and William Backhouse Astor, who built the family's fortunes to around $50 million circa 1875, or well over $1.4 billion adjusted for inflation. Other members of the family have been involved in politics, inventions, and writing. The family's financial backbone has long been real estate. Vincent Astor kept his eye on the ball when it came to real estate and other business, but he was also a notable philanthropist who supported various social reforms. He created the Vincent Astor Foundation to award grants to charitable institutions and gave several good real estate deals to New York's housing projects. His passing on February 3rd kicked off the next phase in the family's story, beginning with a fight over his estate between his wife and his half-brother. Of course, the popular consciousness will always be more affected by the loss of a group of iconic musicians over the death of an elderly millionaire, but it's still fascinating to get a glimpse into what else was happening on the day the music died.